Welcome, everyone. My name is Brandon Townsend, and I'm the current Vice President of Ulster Project Delaware Incorporated, or UPD for short. UPD is a vital program in the communities of both Delaware and Northern Ireland, and is making a real difference in the lives of hundreds of people. For more than 40 years, UPD has offered a haven for teens from Northern Ireland during the month of July. This sanctuary of space and time has changed and developed over these decades. However, what has remained consistent is a month grounded in friendship, the exploration of peace and tolerance, leadership development, and discovery of self and community responsibility for all of the young people involved. At a time in our country where divisions are wide and issues of race, religious intolerance, and violence are in the headlines both locally and nationally, the mission, values, and commitment to community found in Ulster Project Delaware are profoundly important. UPD is committed to helping the youth of today to become thoughtful, compassionate leaders in a divided world. Due to the pandemic, this is the second summer in a row that UPD has not been able to host our annual program. So instead, we decided to partner with various organizations and individuals throughout Delaware to provide youth across the state with informative insight and resources surrounding various topics. Before we get to today's panel of volunteers from NAMI Delaware, we'd like to invite you to visit our website, which is in the banner. It is ulsterprojectdelaware.org. And there you can learn more about who we are as an organization. You can sign up to be a volunteer, or if you're a high school student, you could even apply to be a participating teen next summer. Also on our website, you'll find information about exciting upcoming events and fundraisers we have. One of them is our annual UPD 5K, which is going to be on Wednesday, July 14th at 6:30 p.m. at Midnight Oil Brewing Company in Newark, Delaware. And we are also having a raffle this year of an authenticated autographed Bryce Harper baseball bat, along with 4 tickets to a Phillies game and other Phillies swag. So please visit the website in the banner if you'd like to get more information or to participate in one of those fundraisers. And we're really looking forward to giving you some more information today. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our panel from NAMI Delaware. These wonderful volunteers are Sam, Jordan, and Wes. And I'm going to be specifically turning it over right now to Sam. Thank you very much, Sam.
Hi, thank you so much, Brandon and UPD, for allowing me to share my story today. So I'm 23 years old. I live in New Jersey. I graduated from University of Delaware last spring. And my story that I'm here to talk about today is my journey and recovery from an eating disorder. So for me, it all started about when I was 11 years old. I just really began to notice that there was a beauty standard in our society, and that there are, dieting ads everywhere you look, pretty much. Social media, you see all the models that are thin, and that they're the ones considered beautiful. So for me, it just started as a way that I wanted to lose weight so that I could look like them, because I thought if I looked like them, I would feel worthy and beautiful and loved. So it started off as just any kind of diet, innocent diet. That's what I thought. But quickly it became a disorder. And the difference between having an eating disorder and just going on a diet is that an eating disorder quickly will take over and consume your life. And it's something that you can't just stop. That was something a lot of people said, like, why can't you just eat? So I'll get into that a little bit later. But really, for me, this disorder was a way to feel control. I felt like my life was really out of control around this time too. My parents were splitting up. My mom was, in general, just a little bit stricter. And I felt like I didn't have like the freedom that my friends had. My sister was in college. So I felt kind of alone going through it all. So for me, this eating disorder was a sense of control. And I learned later on that it was a very false sense of control. But in the time, I liked that I was totally in control of my calories, what I would eat, and how I looked. So later on, as this kept going on and on over time, I really did become consumed. And my mind, the only thing that was going on is, well, what am I eating next? Have I ate too much today? Different things like that. And when I was in school, I wasn't even able to pay attention. My teachers and mom thought that I might have ADD because I could not pay attention. But really, it was because I was just so busy in my mind thinking about all these things, thinking about how I looked. And because of this, I was depressed. I was anxious. I withdrew myself from hanging out with my friends. And I honestly wasn't a fun person to be around. I was a very different person during this time. So what really changed for me was that my best friend learned in health class about eating disorders, specifically anorexia. And she learned a lot about the different complications that could happen, like heart failure and liver damage, just a lot of damage to your organs and your overall health. And she confronted me and told me that she was really worried about me, that everything they described with losing weight, being withdrawn, slowly eating less and less, or trying to hide that you eat less. That was a big thing that I did because I didn't want anyone to know that I was trying to lose weight or eat less. Where, if you're on a diet, maybe you will be like, okay, I'm on a diet, I'm proud, like I'm losing weight. For me, it was a secret disorder. So I didn't want people to know that I was losing weight or eating less, because then I'd be caught and, it would be over for me. But I was caught by my best friend, and she told me that that she thought I had this. And I assured her, no, it was just a diet. In my mind, I really did think that it was just a diet, and I just really liked it. I did not realize that it was a mental illness, but I told her that I would just, I would be able to eat perfectly fine the next day and show her that I was fine. And the next day, I was extremely anxious, and I felt like I could barely function because I just was so in my mind and anxious just thinking about how much I ate. So then I realized, okay, maybe I do have a problem. But then she made me tell my parents, and telling them was the best thing possible. And I'm so glad that she did push me to tell them, because with them, they, of course, my parents told me to get help. And I agreed to see a therapist and a nutritionist. But once I saw them, I realized that getting better would mean gaining weight. And in my head, I was still just so focused and had this disordered thinking that I would never be worthy or never be this until I weighed this amount. But the problem was, it would start by, if I lose 5 pounds, I'll be okay. But it almost was like this addiction where after that, it wasn't okay. In fact, I would look in the mirror and think that I looked bigger than ever. So it was just this constant cycle of having to lose more and more weight, or control your food more and more. So it was really this dangerous and vicious cycle. So because therapy and nutritionist at home wasn't working, I was hospitalized. And I was actually hospitalized twice. The first time was pretty much in my mind, if I ate in the hospital, I'd get better. And it would mean I would get out of there. And I just wanted to get out of there and have, the summer with my friends and be any 14-year-old. So I just kind of did the program, but without actually putting work into it. And then I relapsed right when I got home. And the second time I was in the hospital was life-changing. I learned that this disorder isn't about the food. It is all about what's going on mentally, and that I could eat and gain that weight, but that wouldn't even mean that I was recovered from an eating disorder, because I still wanted that control in my life. And I thought that, the eating disorder was the only way to get it. So through the hospital, I learned coping skills, learned a lot about journaling and art therapy. I also, the big thing I really learned is that my eating disorder really was the one having control over me, because I couldn't just stop without feeling that extreme anxiety. And it took over my mind thinking that, you have to look a certain way and do these certain things and you'll never be good enough. So I really learned that if I wanted control in my life, that means I have the control to put an end to this disorder and to fight it. So I used all that, wanting control and feeling that, into fighting my eating disorder instead of giving into it and letting it control me. I opened up. I talked about what was going on in my life that I kind of used my eating disorder to cope with and distract myself from. I spent, hours in tears and talking to a therapist. And I started to realize that I felt like I didn't even need that like coping and false control for my eating disorder anymore, because I had these great coping skills. And I learned that, your weight does not equal your worth, and that you will be loved because of the person you are, not because of the way you look. I mean, when I was at my thinnest, I was at my worst in the disorder, and I was a miserable person to be around. So it really is about loving yourself and working on yourself on the inside, and the outside shouldn't matter to anybody. So I no longer view food as the enemy or anything like that. My eating disorder is the enemy, and that is what I fight and overcome every day. I've been in recovery for about 8 years now, and it has gotten easier and easier every day. And when I do struggle, I just use the coping skills that I learned, some positive affirmations, talk to friends, and this is the most rewarding part for sure, being able to share my story and hopefully inspire you to share yours. So thank you so much again for having me today and allowing me to share my story.
Wow, thank you so much, Sam. That was so powerful and so moving. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story with us. And thank you, Brandon, for the opportunity. Hi, I'm Jordan. I am 23 years old, and I'm also in New Jersey. I also went to the University of Delaware for my undergrad, where I got in contact with NAMI Delaware, and ever since have loved the experience to share my story about my experience with anxiety and depression and substance use, and how I came to recover from my mental illness. So as a child, I always felt a little bit off. I was very anxious, I was withdrawn, I was uncomfortable, but I didn't have the language to describe how I was feeling. I was, about 8 or 9 years old when my mom started to notice these, concerning behaviors that I really wasn't interested in spending time with people. But I couldn't explain to her what I was feeling. It was just my state of being and what I was used to and what I knew. Depression and anxiety and substance use disorders all run in my family. So often I was around these tense and these serious discussions, but I was always listening from the other side of a closed door. There were a lot of questions I didn't have answers to. There was a lot of emotional trauma that I never really learned or understood how to cope with. And I never really had a way to use my own voice to tell my own story. So as I grew up, these feelings really followed me. As I learned to push them down even farther, they got much worse. And when I was in middle school and high school, my anxiety and depression began to impact my life in a much more observable way. My anxiety made it difficult for me to hold myself in social situations. I often felt like people weren't really understanding what I was saying, or I couldn't really, read the room. I was always concerned with how people were perceiving me, and anyone that I expressed these concerns to just described them as being normal teenage stress, which really made me feel invalidated. I developed a habit of holding in all my feelings, which made me even more anxious and depressed and less interested in spending time with people. So it really became a downward spiral. And holding in these feelings resulted in me either acting out in violent or self-sabotaging ways, or hiding from everyone around me and my feelings and anyone who could have been able to help me. When I went to college, I felt ready to face life, but I wasn't emotionally mature enough to deal with the lifestyle changes and the transitions. I didn't have any tools in place to deal with my feelings that I spent so long ignoring, that were really taking a toll on me. My mental health symptoms were at their worst. I wasn't taking care of myself, doing simple things like brushing my hair, my teeth, getting dressed. I was using drugs all of the time as a means to cope, and I shut up all my friends, my family, and most importantly, myself. I became consumed by my mental illness to the point where I didn't even realize how bad of a place I was in, because I had gotten so good at numbing myself and my feelings in order to just exist and make it through every day. I finally had a wake-up call and a reality check when holding in my feelings so much resulted in me acting out in a way that resulted in me getting in trouble. And I realized that this was more than just me being impulsive and making, an unwise decision. It was a manifestation of something much worse going on deep down in terms of my mental health, because it was very out of character, and I didn't even remember why I engaged in such risky behaviors. There was clearly something more going on. So I finally went to my parents and I told them that I couldn't stand to feel the way I was feeling anymore. I couldn't tolerate feeling miserable anymore, and I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to make a change. So that was when my journey to recovery began. And I took a year off from school, and I spent the next year or so in all different kinds of therapy, trying to figure out what mode of recovery works best for me. I learned, I did DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. I did cognitive behavioral therapy. I saw a psychoanalyst. I tried so many things and ended up figuring out what works for me and helps me feel stable. I learned healthy, productive ways to address my feelings of anxiety and depression before they blow up in my face. And I learned which medications help me feel stable. And I know that taking medication doesn't make me any less capable than anyone else. I learned that I have a dual diagnosis of a substance use disorder and what's called a dissociative disorder, both of which developed from my inability to tolerate uncomfortable feelings. And they started from when I was very young. I just never knew how to address them. Like I said, I didn't have the language to describe what it was I was experiencing. But these are feelings that I now understand much better and that I've been working on ever since. Living with mental illness can be a lifelong battle for some people, but as you grow and change, your mental illness grows and changes with you. And it's not something you have to surrender to or feel powerless over. It's something that you can learn to work with and appreciate the ways in which it makes you who you are. Looking back, I always regret not using the supports that I had at the time, but I know that if my life hadn't taken the path that it did, I wouldn't be where I am today and know everything about myself that I know. And I wouldn't, change anything that happened. No two people will have the same journey to recovery. You may learn what doesn't work for you before you learn what does. But at the end of the day, we're all just trying to find our way through life, and ending your silence about mental health and mental illness can encourage another person to do the same. So I thank you for letting me share a very abridged version of my story. Of course, there's always so much more to tell that I am happy to share. But thank you for listening and for your support. And, if you ever feel as though you need help, don't be afraid to reach out because you're not alone. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jordan and Sam, for sharing your stories so far. They're just so super powerful. And thank you, Brandon, for this allowing us this opportunity to share and this platform. So thanks. My name is Wes, and first off, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I am a trans man, and that factors into my story a bit, but I also just want to make sure that when I'm talking about it, that doesn't necessarily mean that these things happen because I was trans, or that people who don't have, any questions about their gender aren't going to relate or anything, because ultimately what was at kind of the base of it was that I felt like I couldn't be myself, and I felt like I had to carry this terrible secret burden with me. And it was only that I could feel as though I could achieve recovery after I was able to be myself. So I always like to do a little disclaimer for that, because I know that sometimes these things can get a little confusing. But anyways, My symptoms definitely started very early on as a young child, and I didn't really have a lot of good, like, I didn't have a lot of good vocabulary to describe what I was going through, and as well as there just wasn't really the education around mental health that there is today. Um, and also, I grew up, my parents we didn't have a lot of money. So a lot of times it was my older sister who was just kind of around watching me. And so um, she wasn't, she didn't really know what was going on. And we moved around a lot. So I didn't really have like a stable, like, a, adulthood figure in my life until I was a little bit older. Um, and so it became very normalized very quickly for me that these are just like, this is just the way that I am, that this is normal, and nothing to question. And I was just kind of labeled like that sensitive kid. But as I started growing up and going through school, I faced a lot of bullying, a lot of harassment. It was very clear, even before I even started to formulate kind of what I was going through in terms of my gender, that to the other kids, I was just very different. And that made me kind of a target. And enduring all of those things just made it all worse. And I felt like between being just labeled that like sensitive kid who needs to, like, you know, harden a little bit, if you will, and then all of the things I was going through with my peers at school, all of the teasing and the harassment and whatnot, it felt like I had no space to tell anybody how I was feeling. I felt like everything that I was feeling, everything that I was thinking about myself, who I was, and whatnot, had to be as close to my chest as possible. Like, nobody could ever know. I could never let it out. And as a result, it just really made me feel like I didn't have a future as a person. Like, I I couldn't imagine, like, getting to the point where I could be myself. And out of that, I just didn't really see where I could go outside of just like following what everybody was expecting me to do. So in high school, things just got worse and worse. I did seek out help from the counseling center, but I was also a really good student. And so I didn't miss a whole lot of school. In fact, school was really the only thing I put everything into, that, and that was like my entire being. Because, like I said, I couldn't be myself. So I didn't have like outside things I did. I wasn't very close to most, if like pretty much all of my classmates. And so I got kind of pushed to the side. I was told I was just like teenage angst. I was told that I have a bright future, 4.0 student, all of that. But it was just getting worse and worse. And then when I finally got to college, I did like a 180 because I was starting to question my gender then. And it really, really scared me. So I was hiding all of the hurt and the feelings, and now I was hiding this other really huge thing about me, and it just kind of exploded in my face. I did not do well in college at all, and that was really troubling because I was doing so well in high school. At least I had that one thing, and now I didn't have that even. And it led to me making an attempt on my life. And I was hospitalized because of this. And it was through that I realized that I really needed to kind of like make a choice, that I was either going to like live my true self, like 100%, and actually, give that a try, or if I was just going to keep doing what I was doing, just trying to make everybody else happy and go on that path that I felt like everybody wanted me to do, but was leading to so much like depression and pain and whatnot. So I ended up making that choice to try, and I came out as a trans person. And I also started treatment for like my mental health symptoms. And it was through that and the combination of making steps towards becoming who I wanted to be, as well as the actually getting the treatment and the medication and seeing a therapist that understood what I was going through, that validated me and that and was helping me to gain coping skills that were really helpful. It was through all of that that I was able to make a recovery and to figure out that actually I have the ability to feel happy, because there was a time that I didn't think that that would ever happen. And so it's just really important to me now to share my story around this, because I know I never heard really anything like this when I was, in high school or even going into college. And I think it would have really helped to, to realize that even in the darkest moment of feeling like there wasn't any future, there was still like a little part of me that wanted there to be. And I just like grabbed onto that and just, built upon it until it was something that I could really firmly believe in and to see was real. So with that being said, I just think that it's the most important thing is just, trusting how you feel and being yourself, because you know yourself best. And even the most well-intentioned people don't always see that. So I'm not very good at endings, but that is my story in a nutshell. And I know we're running low on time. So again, I just thank everybody for sharing their story, and to Brandon particularly for giving us this opportunity. Did you want me to stop now?
So Sam, Jordan, and Wes, thank you all so much for sharing your stories. We really appreciate that. And if you're open to it, we have a couple of questions submitted by some folks in the Ulster Project Delaware community. And the first one, and I think we'll just go in the order that we went in for the stories that you all told, just to make it a little bit easier. So we'll start with Sam. The first question is there a specific coping strategy or anything else you utilize most or find to be the most beneficial?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many different coping strategies I've learned that have helped. I think just talking to someone is always the best, just to kind of get it out there so that it's not this, secret that's hidden with me, and just talking to somebody and letting it out there helps me a lot. Sometimes when I'm really struggling and I just need to take a break for a little bit, I'll go on a walk, just kind of distract myself. But then I always make sure at the end of the day to kind of go back and work through what was happening, why I was struggling, and end with something positive, like telling myself, positive affirmations or something like that. So that is my favorite way to cope, for sure.
Yeah, I have similar coping strategies. I definitely think that talking to someone whom I trust was very helpful, because my greatest issue was holding in what I was feeling, and that would ultimately make me feel worse. I would always try to distract from what I was feeling with other things. So to really address how I was feeling and to kind of work through it was very helpful. And if I were to distract from, feeling depressed or anxious, I would want it to be something healthy and productive. Like, I'm very into art, so I would really get involved in my artwork. I would try to read a book. Getting outside is amazing. Seasonal depression is definitely a thing. So that really helped me, especially with the pandemic, was, just getting outside and getting fresh air and just teaching myself to exist in every moment. Even if I'm feeling anxious or depressed, that definitely helped me.
Yeah, I always kind of struggle with self-care sometimes, and knowing like really what my best coping skills are. I feel like most of it is just like staying on my routine and making sure that I'm doing everything that I need to do to stay healthy in all respects. So, when you have depression, it can be hard to even get out of bed. It can be hard to brush your teeth and whatnot. So even just doing those things, I feel like I celebrate those milestones each and every day, even as healthy as I am now, as well as making sure that, you know, I'm taking my medications regularly and everything. And I feel like those small things just really show that I do care about myself and that I do want myself to succeed. And that carries out through really everything else that I do. And then through that, I kind of also try to make it like a priority to set aside some time for myself. So like Jordan was saying, to read a book or maybe go outside and take a walk, although maybe not in this heat personally, but you know, to get fresh air and everything. So setting aside that me time can be really difficult, but is very important.
Thank you all so much. The next question we have is, before I get to the question, actually, I want to point out, folks, in the banner below, there's also the web address for NAMI Delaware. It's namidelaware.org. There are a ton of useful resources on that website in regards to mental health, mental illness. So if you can visit NAMI Delaware, you can find a lot of resources that you can use. So other than the NAMI Delaware website, is there one or multiple resources that you all find useful or that you could kind of point people towards in regards to anything specific that you think may be useful for them?
For me, I think the most useful thing, and I know NAMI Delaware does offer these, are finding a good support group or any type of just support system that you can find, whether online, especially now, or in person. For me, having a support group was most beneficial because a lot of the time my friends didn't understand what I was going through, and that made me feel really alone and like there was something wrong with me. And when I first joined a support group, I realized that I'm not alone and that I'm understood and that people are going through the exact same thing. So personally, that is something that I would look into if you're struggling. But of course, everyone's different. Some people don't like support groups, but personally, that is what really helped me.
Yeah, me as well. I know that there are tons of online forums that are anonymous where you can always find someone who helps you feel a little less alone. Tons of websites, and there are apps to help with meditation and mindfulness. A specific support group, I guess I would call it, that I became involved in is Alcoholics Anonymous. That helped me a lot with my substance use disorder. And it really gave me the framework to work through what I was experiencing. But I was practicing that in conjunction with, you know, working with my therapist and doing things like Wes said, you know, setting aside time for myself. So I think it's important to note that it's a combination of all of these things that can really be the most effective.
Yeah, so I will add just a few material resources specifically for LGBTQ plus youth. The Trevor Project and Trans Lifeline are both two amazing resources, especially if you're of the community, because it's really important when, you know, you're in that kind of state to talk to somebody who understands and who's going to affirm you and your identity. And so I think that they just do amazing work, and on their websites too, they have a lot of resources. Also, I get a lot of questions from parents and everything, so I just want to do a shout out to PFLAG, the organization, which is a great way for parents as well as just allies in general, whatnot, to also get involved and to learn a lot. And outside of that, just like what Sam and Jordan were saying, it's just really about staying connected to people who understand who you are and who are going to help support you and uplift you, and then you can do the same with them. And it's just really a great sort of like cyclical relationship where where it just feels really good to help other people as well as them helping you. So those support groups, those, you know, even just like hobby groups and things like that can be really good for that. So
thank you very much once again. And so last one for you guys. And I'm glad, Wes, that you had just mentioned this in terms of parents. So whether it's advice or anything else you want to share, whether it's students, high school or middle school students, or college age students, or young adults, or even parents, what's one bit of advice or anything else that you feel would be important to share that could help someone?
I guess this is specifically for anyone who is worried about a friend or maybe a family member. Just going back to my story, my friend, when she confronted me, and told me that she was going to make me tell my parents, that kind of thing, I hear that it happens a lot, and that friends, especially when you're younger, you don't want to overstep boundaries or be a bad friend and, make your friend mad by telling their parents that you're really worried about them. But the thing is that later on in life, they will thank you so much because you. So, my best advice would be to tell a trusted adult if you are really worried and your friend, isn't listening, denying it. But first, go to your friend, tell them that you're worried about them, and even just in general, check up on your friends, even the ones that seem, happy and seem okay. Just check up on people every once in a while.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I wish that I had some more people check in on me, but I definitely made it hard, because I was really good at pretending like everything was okay. So it's important to recognize that sometimes people who might seem like they're okay really could use a helping hand. My piece of advice would probably be just to recognize that your mental health is your own, and not to make decisions about it based on what other people might think. I, for one, was very hesitant to get help because I was worried about how people might view me. I was, the stigma definitely discouraged me from getting the proper help that I needed at an earlier point. But with time, I realized that in order for me to be healthy and happy and successful in my life and have the life that I wanted, that I needed to address my mental health and my mental illness in a way that worked for me. And I needed to, put aside my ideas of how my life should be and start to, take the steps to make a change in my life. So I would say just realize that, this is something that is, a time to focus on yourself.
My piece of advice would probably be, is there's, if the way that you feel is so valid and important, and there's really no part of you that you have to hide away. You as a person will, just the general you. Sorry, I don't know why I got so anxious all of a sudden. So, just being true to yourself is just the most important part of this. As Jordan was saying, regardless of what other people think, regardless of what you think that they expect of you or what they're telling you that they expect of you, the most important part is being true to yourself, because ultimately that's what people will pick up on and to know, and that there are always going to be people out there who will accept you no matter what. So it's just about, sticking around and, making your way to find those people.
Thank you all so much. I mean, you're all, I can never say it enough how amazing and wonderful not only you three are, but just NAMI Delaware in general. So for everyone out there watching, if you need resources or need support, please visit the website in the banner, namidelaware.org. There are plenty of resources there. You can also sign up to be a volunteer. You can donate, or you can participate in upcoming fundraisers they may be running. Once again, if you're interested in learning more about Ulster Project Delaware, our website's in the banner as well. We have a 5K coming up in July, as well as an autographed Bryce Harper Phillies bat that's authenticated that we're raffling off. Thank you all for tuning in. We hope to see you in one of our next videos. I believe the next video we have in a few weeks is going to be featuring an interview with State Senator Sarah McBride. So we look forward to providing that to you. Thank you, Sam, Jordan, and Wes, so much for your time and energy today, but forever, for everything you guys do for NAMI and for students throughout the state of Delaware and for folks. So thank you all very much. Thank everyone for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.